The void erupted in blinding arcs of plasma fire as our dreadnought surged forward, shields flaring under the relentless barrage. I gripped the command chair, every nerve alive with the vibration of the hull as alien warships closed in from 3 vectors. Their formations were precise, unnervingly synchronized, like predators circling prey. I ordered the port batteries to sweep wide, unleashing a storm of ion lances that carved through their vanguard, tearing one cruiser apart in a blossom of molten fragments. The tactical display flickered with red markers, each representing another hostile vessel pressing into the outer rim. Our fleet was stretched thin, every ship locked in desperate combat. I watched the flagship Resolute pivot hard, its massive frame banking to unleash a broadside of antimatter torpedoes. The shockwave rippled across the battle space, scattering alien interceptors like dust in a solar flare. Yet for every ship we destroyed, 2 more seemed to emerge from the abyss, their hulls shimmering with adaptive armor that bent our targeting systems. I barked orders to the helm, forcing our warship into a risky dive through the debris field of shattered frigates. The maneuver gave us cover, but the alien dreadnought ahead loomed like a mountain of steel and fire, its plasma cannons charging with a glow that threatened to split us in half. My pulse hammered as I commanded the forward railguns to fire in sequence, each shot a spear of kinetic fury that slammed into its shields. Sparks cascaded across its surface, but the beast kept advancing, inexorable, unstoppable. The comms crackled with frantic voices, reports of hull breaches, desperate pleas for reinforcements, the chaos of men and women fighting to hold the line. I silenced the noise, focusing on the rhythm of battle, the dance of destruction. Our starboard wing launched a coordinated strike, fighters weaving through the maelstrom to deliver precision payloads against the alien dreadnought's weak points. Explosions rippled across its flank, and for a moment hope surged. But then its counterattack came, a torrent of plasma beams that shredded half our squadron in a heartbeat. I clenched my jaw, refusing to yield. Humanity's survival depended on this stand, on our ability to endure the storm. With every command, every shot fired, I felt the weight of billions pressing against my shoulders. The warships of the outer rim burned around me, but still we fought, steel against fire, courage against annihilation. And as the alien Leviathan bore down, I swore we would not break. We would clash until the void itself trembled with the fury of our defiance. The first plasma lance from the Leviathan's forward battery slammed into our port shields before I could finish the thought, the entire ironhold shuddering so hard my teeth clacked together, sparks raining from the overhead conduit arrays as the alarm klaxons cut through the roar of battle. The viewport's auto-filters cranked to maximum to block the searing orange glow of the impact, but the heat still seeped through the reinforced glass, making the skin on my face prickle, the sharp stench of burning insulation filling the command deck. Tactical blinked red, hull integrity plummeting to 72% in the span of 3 seconds, the dreadnought's secondary cannons already rotating to track our position, their mazes glowing a sickly blue as they charged. I fought the helm's autocorrect, shoving the throttle forward to keep us from being bracketed, the ship screaming as we dove between the tumbling wreckage of a frigate we'd lost 10 minutes prior, jagged chunks of hull pinging off our starboard armor with a sound like hailstones on metal. Divert all auxiliary power to forward shields and railgun capacitors. I roared over the din, the comms still crackling with half-heard reports of hull breaches on the Resolute's lower decks, desperate pleas from engineering teams fighting to keep reactor cores from going critical. Cut life support to non-essential compartments. I don't care if the crew complains. Give me every jewel we've got. The Resolute's reload timer blinked 8 seconds out, its massive frame already angling to bring its full broadside to bear, but the Leviathan's ventral plasma injector, damaged by Rook's strike run 10 minutes prior, was glowing brighter by the second, charging a salvo of 6 lance cannons that could punch clean through the Resolute's keel before it could fire a single torpedo. I watched the tactical feed, Counting down, my fingers white-knuckled on the command console, the taste of copper flooding my mouth from the shockwave of the last impact. Point defense batteries, saturation fire on the Leviathan's injector vent. Don't let it finish that charge. Thousands of flak rounds and ion bursts streamed from our starboard launchers, peppering the dreadnought's underbelly, but the adaptive armor shifted in real time, rippling like liquid mercury to bend the projectiles away before they could hit the weak point. The Leviathan's charge hit 90%, the glow so bright it washed out the tactical display for 2 full seconds, and I knew we had 3 seconds before it fired. "Rook, you still with us?" I barked into the comms, the surviving fighter pilot's voice crackling back a second later, tight with strain, the faint whir of his engine bleeding through the static. "Got a lock on the secondary vent, Captain. 1 pass, 1 charge, but I need you to draw its point defense fire for 3 full seconds. Can't do it if those lasers are tracking me." "You'll get your 3 seconds," I gritted out, yanking the helm hard to port to angle our bow directly at the Leviathan's forward cannon array. The point defense turrets on the dreadnought swiveled toward our position immediately, thin red laser beams slicing through the void, pinging off our shields with a high-pitched whine that set my teeth on edge. I ordered the port flak batteries to lay down a wall of chaff and shrapnel between Rook's fighter and the dreadnought, the small craft weaving through the debris field, its engine trail a tiny streak of white against the dark. The countdown hit 0. The Leviathan's lance cannons fired, 6 bolts of superheated plasma streaking toward the Resolute. Then Rook's singularity charge slammed into the secondary vent, the dreadnought's entire underbelly buckling inward, the plasma bolts fizzling out mid-flight as the charge detonated inside its weapon systems. The Leviathan lurched, listing hard to starboard, its forward armor plating cracking open in a gash 3 kilometers long, venting superheated atmosphere and twisted metal into the void, the released gas catching the light of distant stars and glowing a pale, ghostly blue. The Resolute's broadside fired then, 32 antimatter torpedoes streaking across the battle space, slamming into the gash in the dreadnought's armor, the explosions blooming like a chain of miniature suns along its flank, the shockwave rippling out to rattle our hull. I whooped, slamming my fist on the console, before the tactical display lit up with new red markers. The cruiser screen we'd thought was destroyed earlier, 5 heavy cruisers pouring plasma fire into our undefended rear flank, their formations sharp, unnervingly synchronized just like the first wave. "Incoming cruisers, aft vector," I yelled, spinning the helm to bring our rear batteries to bear. The ion lances from our aft launchers slammed into the lead cruiser's shields, but they held, the alien ships returning fire, a plasma bolt slamming into our aft shield generator, sending a jolt up the command deck that threw half the bridge crew to the floor. Hull integrity dropped to 58%, the generator sputtering, warning lights flashing red across every console. The Leviathan was recovering, its engines firing as it tried to retreat, but the damage to its ventral section was throwing its thrusters out of alignment. It was moving slow, vulnerable. I locked our targeting systems onto its command spire, diverting every remaining joule of power from the aft shield generator to the forward torpedo tubes. All ships, focus fire on the Leviathan's command spire. Do not let it escape. The remaining frigates and cruisers in our task force poured every remaining weapon they had into the spire, railgun slugs and ion bursts pummeling the structure, until it crumpled inward, the entire dreadnought exploding in a silent, blinding flash of white light that lit up the entire sector, the shockwave slamming into our ship so hard the hull groaned, the forward shields failing completely, a chunk of twisted dreadnought hull slamming into our port bow, punching a gash in the outer armor. I wiped blood from a cut above my eye, staring at the tactical display, waiting for the alarms to die down, waiting for the cheers that never came. Because just past the fading light of the Leviathan's explosion, new markers were blinking into existence, hundreds of them emerging from the shadow of the nearby nebula, larger than the last wave, their hulls glinting with weapons we'd never seen before. The comms crackled, the Resolute's captain's voice tight, exhausted, cutting through the haze of pain in my skull. "Voss, you seeing that?" "Seeing it," I said, my throat tight, my hand resting on the firing stud for the last of our torpedoes, the hum of the reloading capacitors thrumming under my palm. "Tell engineering to reroute power from life support to the main gun." "We're not breaking today." "Engineering confirmed, sir." The comms officer's voice was shrill, barely cutting through the wail of hull breach alarms that had started screaming the second the new wave poured out of the nebula. "Life support is at 38% on decks 4 through 12. Main gun capacitors are at 97% and climbing. 10 seconds to full charge." I didn't answer, my eyes locked on the tactical display where the lead alien capital ship, a jagged obsidian behemoth 3 times the size of the Leviathan we'd just torn apart, was charging its forward batteries. Green ion cores glowed bright along its flank, brighter than the stars bleeding out behind the nebula's roiling purple haze. The first salvo hit before the capacitors were even at full charge, 3 plasma bolts slamming into our unshielded bow. The impact threw me against the back of my command chair, the metal frame digging into my spine as the hull screamed in protest, integrity dropping to 42% in the span of a heartbeat. A gout of superheated atmosphere vented from a breach on the starboard side, painting the black of space with a streak of glowing orange before the automatic sealant slammed shut, the sharp stench of burnt insulation filling the bridge. "Point defense batteries, free fire on the fighter swarms," I yelled, grabbing the edge of the console to steady myself as the ship rocked again, another plasma bolt chewing through the port hangar bay, blowing the remaining 2 strike craft we'd had left to scrap. The bridge viewport lit up with the tracers of our point defense rounds, picking off the small, darting alien fighters that were peeling off the carrier wing of the enemy fleet. But there were too many of them, swarming like irradiated hornets, their tiny plasma cannons peppering our hull in a constant, staccato drumbeat. The Resolute's voice cut through the chaos, tight with the strain of a pilot fighting to keep his crippled ship steady. "Voss, they're targeting my last engine. I've got 3 cruisers bearing down, I can't outmaneuver." I spared half a second to glance at the Resolute's marker on the tactical display, its hull already scorched black from the earlier Leviathan fight, its starboard nacelle torn clean off, drifting in the debris field of the first Leviathan's explosion. "Divert all remaining shield power to your port side. I'm laying down suppressing fire on their bow shields." "You get close enough, you ram the lead cruiser, take out as many of their carriers as you can." "Copy that," he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice, sharp and desperate. "For the core worlds." The main gun capacitors hit 100% with a thrum that vibrated through the deck plates, up the legs of my command chair, into my teeth. I locked the targeting reticle onto the lead alien capital ship's central command spire, the same weak point we'd exploited on the Leviathan. "Fire!" The spinal-mounted quantum disruption cannon let out a roar that drowned out every alarm on the bridge for half a second, a beam of crackling white energy slamming into the alien ship's forward shields, punching through them like they were made of paper, tearing through the hull, erupting out the other side in a shower of molten alien alloy and twisted wreckage. The ship listed hard to port, drifting into the path of 2 of its own cruisers, all 3 exploding in a silent bloom of orange and purple that lit up the edge of the nebula. But there were still hundreds more markers pouring out of the nebula's shadow, faster now, their formations tightening as they bore down on our battered task force. A plasma bolt slipped past our point defense screen, slamming into the bridge's tactical station. The tactical officer, a kid no older than 19 named Jax, didn't even have time to scream before the blast threw him clear of his console, his body crumpling against the bulkhead. The tactical display flickered, half the markers vanishing for 3 seconds before it rebooted, the red alien icons flooding back in, brighter and more numerous than before. I vaulted out of my command chair, sliding across the blood-slicked deck to the tactical console, my fingers flying over the keys to recalibrate the targeting systems before the ensign assigned to the station could even fumble for the controls. Lock onto the cruiser targeting the Resolute's last engine, Priority 1. All forward batteries, fire for effect on its bow shields now. The ion lances from our forward launchers slammed into the cruiser's shields in a continuous stream, the blue bolts pummeling the barrier until it flickered and failed. The Resolute's engines flared so bright they outshone the distant stars, the crippled dreadnought slamming into the cruiser's port side with enough force to shear the alien ship clean in half. The explosion took out 4 of the alien fighters swarming the Resolute's hull, but the shockwave slammed into our bow, throwing me back against the bulkhead hard enough to rattle my teeth. Hull integrity dropped to 31%, the warning klaxon for the forward ammunition magazines blaring so loud it made my ears ring. The comms crackled again, the Resolute's captain's voice breaking up, staticky, as his ship drifted into the debris field of the explosion. Voss, we're dead in the water. Engineering is gone, life support is at 12% across the ship. We're rigging the core to blow, gonna take out as many of their carriers as we can when they get in range. Tell the core worlds. His voice cut out for a second, static buzzing over the line. Tell them we didn't go easy. I pressed my fist to the viewport, watching the Resolute's remaining running lights flicker once, twice, before a string of explosions rippled up its spine, the entire ship blowing apart in a fireball that engulfed 3 of the alien carriers, sending their twisted hulls spinning off into the dark. The gap it left in our formation was immediate, the alien cruisers pouring through it, their plasma cannons tracking straight for our command spire. I slammed my fist on the comms cutout, my voice raw, no room left for fear, only the cold, sharp edge of rage. All remaining ships form up on my hull. Frigates take point, draw their fire away from the capital ships. Cruisers target their engine nacelles, take their mobility out first. We hold this line or we die trying. No retreat, no surrender. The frigates surged ahead, their smaller frames darting into the storm of plasma fire like gnats before a hurricane. I watched their shields flare and collapse, hull plating peeling away as they absorbed the brunt of the alien barrage. Every second they bought us was another chance to reposition, another heartbeat closer to survival. My own dreadnought groaned under the strain, the deck vibrating as the main batteries cycled up for another salvo. Helm, swing us 30 degrees starboard, bring the port batteries into play, I barked, gripping the console so hard my knuckles whitened. The ship responded sluggishly, wounded but still defiant, thrusters burning bright as we rolled into the alien formation. The tactical display lit up with a dozen hostile signatures converging, their carriers disgorging wave after wave of fighters. The swarm came at us like a living tide, plasma streaks carving through the void. I ordered the point defense turrets to full auto, the ship's hull shuddering as hundreds of rapid-fire bursts stitched the black, cutting down fighters in incandescent trails. One of our cruisers, the ironclad, broke formation, its captain gambling everything on a direct strike. It plowed through the alien line, shields collapsing under the relentless fire, but its forward rail batteries punched clean through an enemy dreadnought's core. The detonation was blinding, a chain reaction ripping the alien vessel apart in a cascade of molten fragments. The ironclad didn't survive the run, its hull splitting open as plasma fire consumed it, but the gap it left in their line was the opening we needed. Capital ships, concentrate fire on that breach, I shouted, my throat raw, the words tearing out of me like a battle cry. Our dreadnoughts unleashed everything, ion lances, plasma torpedoes, rail slugs, an orchestra of destruction that hammered into the exposed flank of the alien fleet. Their shields flickered, their formation faltered, and for the first time in hours I saw hesitation in their advance. But hesitation wasn't retreat. Their reinforcements surged in from the far edge of the battle space, more carriers, more cruisers, the endless tide pressing forward. My heart pounded as I realized the truth. This wasn't a battle we could win outright. It was a stand, a desperate wall of steel and fire meant to buy time for the core worlds to prepare. I leaned over the comms, voice steady despite the chaos. We hold until the last hull breaks. Humanity's line does not fall tonight. The deck shook violently as another plasma barrage slammed into our bow, sparks raining from the ceiling, smoke choking the air. My vision blurred, but I forced my eyes back to the tactical display. The alien icons kept multiplying, red flooding the screen like blood. And still, I refused to yield. The klaxons cut on so loud my teeth ached, the red strobe of hull breach warnings painting the bridge in pulsing streaks of blood, the thick stench of ozone and burnt flesh from the earlier fighter impacts mixing with the sharp bite of leaking coolant. A plasma bolt the size of a barracks had punched clean through our port bow shield, searing a gash through the forward armor plating, and the deck tilted hard to starboard as the thrusters fought to compensate for the lost mass. "Damage report," I roared over the wail of the alarms, wiping a trickle of blood from my split lip where the jolt had thrown me against my command chair. "Bow shield generator offline. Hull breach deck 7. Damage control teams are sealing it now." The tactical officer's voice was tight, his fingers flying across his console as he tracked the swarm of red hostile signatures surging through the gap the ironclad had bought us. Multiple cruisers breaking through the breach, heading for our carrier screen. I slammed my fist on the arm of my chair. "All available point defense batteries, shift fire to the cruisers." "Frigate screen, move to plug that gap. I don't care if you have to ram them to hold the line." The Vanguard, our lead destroyer, cut across the path of the oncoming cruisers before the frigate screen could even respond, its port engine blown out, drifting sideways on a plume of vented atmosphere. Its comms crackled to life, the captain's voice rough and unshaken. "This is Vanguard, we're not making it out. Setting magazine detonation, clear the area in 10. "Vanguard hold," I started, but the channel cut off. The destroyer's hull glowed white-hot for half a second before it blew, a fireball of molten steel and plasma debris that tore through 3 of the alien cruisers in a single flash, their hulls crumpling like tin foil before they vanished in secondary explosions. The shockwave rattled our teeth even from 3 kilometers out. The gap shrank, but the cost seared through me, another white icon vanishing from the tactical display. The remaining alien dreadnoughts adjusted their fire, all batteries trained on our flagship now, plasma bolts slamming into our starboard shields so hard the entire bridge shuddered, sparks showering from the overhead conduits. Our main batteries cycled, rail slugs the size of transport pods punching clean through the lead alien dreadnought's bridge tower, sending it cartwheeling into the void in a shower of glowing debris. But our starboard shield generator took a direct hit a second later, fizzling out into useless slag. "Fighter wing, launch all remaining craft. Clear the superstructure of those boarding pods," I ordered, watching as the small red icons swarmed our hull, cutting through the outer plating to deploy alien troops. Our own fighters burst from the launch bays, burning hard into the swarm, their plasma cannons stitching trails of fire through the enemy craft. But they were outnumbered 3-1, and I watched 2 of them vanish in a burst of flak before they could even lock onto a target. The comms crackled again, the priority channel from the core world's evacuation fleet blaring to life. The voice of the fleet admiral was strained, tight with relief and terror. "Evacuation fleet is 90% clear of the jump gate. We need 10 more minutes. Repeat 10 more minutes to clear the final transports." I leaned into the mic, my voice steady even as another plasma barrage slammed into our aft shields, the deck heaving under the impact. "All ships copy that. 10 minutes. Hold the line." I keyed the fleet-wide channel, letting every captain hear me, every gunner, every damage control rat crawling through burning corridors. "That's what we're here for. 10 minutes to get every man, woman, and child off those colonies to safety. You die holding this line, you die knowing you saved them. No one breaks formation. No one yields." A roar went up over the comms, rough and ragged and furious, and the fire from our capital ships intensified. Every remaining torpedo, every ion lance, every rail slug poured into the alien formation. The alien command ship, a monolithic hulking shape at the rear of their fleet, glowed bright as it began to charge a spinal mount cannon I'd only seen in threat briefings, the kind that could glass a whole planet in a single shot. All batteries, target that command ship. I screamed, pointing at the massive red icon on the tactical display. Dump every last round we have into it now. Torpedoes streaked from every ship in our fleet, a cloud of glowing warheads arcing across the void. The alien point defense batteries swatted most of them out of the sky, but a dozen punched through the command ship's forward shields, slamming into its core. The hulk glowed brighter, then erupted in a cataclysmic explosion that rolled out in a shockwave, taking out half a dozen supporting cruisers and crippling the rest of the alien advance. The red icons on the tactical display flickered, slowed. For the first time since the battle began, the alien tide was breaking. But the victory was short-lived. A stray plasma bolt slammed into our main reactor core, the alarm screaming so loud I could barely hear myself think, the bridge filling with the acrid smell of burning coolant. The deck tilted violently, the tactical display fizzling out for half a second before the backup systems kicked in. Our hull integrity was at 12%, the main batteries offline, only the point defense turrets still firing. I looked out the forward viewport, past the burning wreckage of alien fighters and our own dead ships, and saw the faint blue shimmer of the core world's jump gate flaring to life, the last of the evacuation transports vanishing through it. 10 minutes exactly. The alien remnants that were still functional surged forward one last time, a handful of crippled cruisers and a single damaged dreadnought heading straight for our flagship, determined to take us down with them. I keyed the comms one last time, my voice calm, almost quiet. All remaining crew, abandoned ship. I'm staying with the Vulture. That was our dreadnought's name. I'd forgotten to say it until now. She's not going down alone. The bridge crew started to evacuate, the young comms officer pausing at the door, looking back at me. "Sir, you're coming with us." I shook my head, watching the alien dreadnought charge its forward batteries, the plasma glow building at its muzzle. "Go. Get to the escape pods. I've got one last job to do." I overrode the safeties on the Vulture's remaining torpedo tubes, targeting the alien dreadnought's exposed core, and waited. The alien shot was already coming, a bolt of superheated plasma that would turn our bridge to ash in a microsecond, but I had time. I pressed the fire button, and the last two plasma torpedoes we had left streaked out, slamming into the alien dreadnought's reactor just as its own shot hit our bridge. The last thing I saw was the flash of white, the sound of tearing metal, and the thought that we'd held. We'd held long enough. The blast consumed everything, but consciousness clung to me like a stubborn ember. I woke to the soundless void, the Vulture's wreckage drifting in fractured silence, her hull torn open, bleeding fire into the abyss. My console flickered half-dead, but the tactical sensors still whispered data. The alien dreadnought was gone, obliterated, but its escorts remained, limping forward, their weapons sputtering, desperate to finish what their flagship had begun. I forced auxiliary power into the maneuvering thrusters, the Vulture's carcass groaning as I angled her broken frame toward the enemy. The ship was no longer a war machine, just a burning spear, but it was enough. I locked the trajectory, overriding every safety, every failsafe, and felt the engines surge one last time. The dreadnought's remains became a weapon, a dying leviathan hurling itself into the alien cruisers. The collision was apocalyptic. Hulls crumpled, plasma reactors ruptured, and the void lit up with cascading detonations. Alien ships shattered under the impact, their formations collapsing into chaos. My viewport filled with fire and debris, the stars themselves drowned in the storm of destruction. Through the haze, I caught sight of the last transport clearing the jump gate, its silhouette vanishing into the shimmer. Humanity's survivors were gone, safe for now. My chest tightened with a strange calm. The Vulture had held, and I had held with her. The bridge was collapsing around me, consoles sparking, bulkheads tearing free. I gripped the armrests of the command chair, watching the alien fleet disintegrate, knowing this was the end. The war wasn't won, not yet, but the outer rim had bought its final breath of time. The void swallowed the wreckage, and I let it take me too, the silence absolute, the stars burning cold and eternal. The darkness didn't last. My eyes snapped open to the glow of emergency lights, the faint hum of a rescue frigate's tractor beams pulling what was left of the Vulture into its hold. I was alive, though barely, and the war was far from over. Through the fractured viewport, I saw the outer rim battlefield still raging, alien warships swarming like predators, their plasma lances carving through human hulls with merciless precision. I staggered to the auxiliary console, patching into the frigate's tactical net. The fleet was scattered, dreadnoughts bleeding fire, destroyers breaking formation under relentless pressure. Alien cruisers moved with terrifying coordination, their weapons synchronized in devastating volleys. Every human ship that tried to regroup was hammered back into fragments. The frigate's captain barked orders, his voice raw with desperation. All batteries fire at will. Keep the line intact. The hull shuddered as our rail cannon spat tungsten slugs into the void, tearing into an alien corvette that spun apart in a blossom of molten shards. But for every kill, 3 more enemy ships surged forward, their plasma beams slicing through our escorts like paper. I took the helm, overriding the frigate's autopilot. We can't hold the line. We need to break their formation. I swung the frigate hard to port, engines screaming, and dove straight into the alien wedge. Plasma fire streaked past, some shots grazing our shields, others punching holes through the aft decks. The crew screamed, but the maneuver worked. The alien ships faltered, their tight formation unraveling as they scrambled to adjust. Human dreadnoughts seized the opening. The Titan-class warship Iron Resolve unleashed a broadside of plasma torpedoes, each warhead detonating with the force of a collapsing star. Alien cruisers disintegrated in the blast, their wreckage scattering across the void. The fleet rallied, destroyers surging forward, railguns and missile pods roaring in unison. But the aliens adapted. Their battleships advanced, massive leviathans bristling with weapons, their cores glowing with unholy energy. One fired a beam so vast it split the battlefield in two, vaporizing a human carrier in a single strike. The shockwave rattled every hull, the comm channels filled with static and screams. I gritted my teeth, forcing the frigate into the chaos. Target their reactors. Aim for the glow. Our plasma batteries locked on, firing volley after volley into the battleship's exposed core. The shots tore through its shielding, rupturing its reactor in a cataclysmic explosion that lit the void brighter than a sun. The alien fleet reeled, but they did not retreat. More ships poured through the jump gate, endless reinforcements flooding the battlefield. Humanity's last stand was only beginning, and the outer rim burned with the fury of war. I tightened my grip on the helm, the frigate trembling under the strain. There was no escape now. We would fight until the stars themselves went dark. The jump gate's spool whine drowned out the hull's shudder for half a second, a low, guttural thrum vibrating through the deck plates under my boots before the first wave of hostiles poured through. Violet engine trails streaked across the void first. Dozens of Xenodart corvettes no bigger than escape pods spitting flechettes of superheated tungsten that pinged off our forward shields like rain on a tin roof. The tactical officer's voice cut through the static, sharp and panicked. Incoming count already at 62. They're swarming the escort screen, bypassing our point defense entirely. I yanked the helm hard to starboard, the frigate's port engines flaring as I dove into the gap between 2 destroyers, the Valiant's Edge and Harbinger's Wake. A trio of darts peeled off, their engines burning bright, and one slammed into the Valiant's Edge's port bow. The destroyer's shields flared white for half a second before collapsing, hull plating splitting open like overripe fruit, molten shards, and decompressing atmosphere spraying into the void. Escape pods fired off in a ragged cluster, half of them picked off by xeno-interceptors before they could clear the blast radius, their hulls crumpling in silent bursts of fire. The Iron Resolve loomed off our starboard bow, her Titan-class hull bristling with rail batteries and torpedo tubes, but a salvo of green plasma lances from the new wave of hostiles slammed into her port flank. Orange fire bloomed across her 4-kilometer-long hull, her forward starboard rail battery going dark in a flash of sparks. The dreadnought's captain's voice boomed over the fleet comm, gravelly and unshaken even as his ship shuddered. All available frigates, form up on my starboard flank. We're punching through the gate's event horizon, take the fight to their spawn point before they can pile more ships through. I keyed our comms, overriding the auto-response, frigate warden's oath, moving to position. Cover our approach. I pushed the throttle to maximum, the frigate's engine screaming as we cut across the battlefield, weaving between debris fields and stray plasma bolts. A Xeno battlecruiser, twice the size of our entire frigate, peeled off from the gate's throat, its spore-shaped weapon pods pulsing with sick neon green. It fired a lance of plasma that caught the Harbinger's wake amidships, the destroyer's reactor blowing in a silent, expanding fireball that took out 3 of our corvette escorts with the shockwave. The battlecruiser turned its prow toward us, pods opening to fire another salvo, and I saw a tiny Xeno corvette break from its swarm, zipping straight for the Iron Resolve's exposed engineering pod, the one venting thin atmosphere from the earlier plasma hit, its shielding still down. The weapons officer's voice was shrill. Target's too small, can't get a lock before it reaches the dreadnought. I overrode the targeting system, my fingers flying over the manual control console, adjusting for the corvette's erratic weaving, compensating for our frigate's roll from the last near-miss plasma hit. I pulled the trigger for our forward plasma cannon, a single, superheated bolt slamming straight into the corvette's engine core. It blew apart in a shower of sparks and molten metal, wreckage spinning off to miss the Iron Resolve's hull by less than 80 meters. The dreadnought's comms crackled, the captain's rough huff of relief coming through. Nice shooting, Warden. Hold formation, we're pushing through in 10. The gate's glow shifted then, the sick violet streaked with deep, abyssal black, and a low, subsonic thrum rolled across the void that made my teeth ache. The tactical officer's face went pale, her hands flying across her console. Command, new energy signature. It's not a ship. It's a hive Leviathan. It's breaching the gate right now. The Leviathan's prow punched through the gate's event horizon first, chitinous black armor glinting with the light of 1,000 dying stars, 3 times the size of the Iron Resolve, thousands of weapon ports dotting its hull like pockmarks, all of them opening at once. A wall of plasma and kinetic slugs slammed into our forward screen, shields flaring white before collapsing entirely. A kinetic slug punched through our forward deck, incinerating the comms station, the comms officer slumping forward over his console, smoke pouring from his uniform. Blood trickled down my forehead from the impact shock, the bridge smelling of burnt wiring and sharp, coppery fear. I gritted my teeth, yanking the helm hard to port to avoid a second salvo. All hands brace for impact. Weapons, target every open weapon port on that thing. Missile batteries, fire every single warhead we have, no reserves. The frigate lurched as another plasma blast caught our port shields, the engines whining as I pushed them to 120% capacity, diving straight for the Leviathan's face, weaving between the streaks of incoming fire. I could see its core pulsing deep inside its chitinous hull, a bright, angry red glow bright enough to burn through the viewport if I stared too long. The weapons officer yelled that we had a clear lock on the core, and I ordered the full spread of 24 plasma torpedoes fired. They streaked out, slamming into the Leviathan's prow, blowing chunks of chitin off, exposing the glowing core underneath. The Leviathan convulsed, then fired a beam of plasma so wide it swallowed 3 of our corvettes whole, before slamming into the Iron Resolve's starboard side. The dreadnought's hull split open like a cracked egg, fire and debris exploding out into the void, its engines cutting out entirely as it started drifting, dead in the water. The fleet comm filled with screams and panicked static, and I yelled over it, my voice raw, "Ignore the drift. Focus fire on the Leviathan. Take it down or we all die here." a Xeno fighter slipped through our point defense, slamming into our starboard engine nacelle. The frigate lurched hard to port, alarms blaring, the engineering officer yelling over the comms that the starboard engine was destroyed. We were running on port only at 70% output. I stabilized the helm, my knuckles white on the controls, the taste of blood and ozone thick in my mouth. The weapons officer yelled that the Leviathan's core was fully exposed now, no shielding left, and I ordered the forward plasma cannon to max charge. The cannon hummed, building power until the bridge lights flickered, and I pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt was so bright it blinded me for a full second, and when my vision cleared, it was buried deep in the Leviathan's core. The entire ship convulsed, then exploded in a blast so bright it outshone the system's sun, the shockwaves slamming into our frigate and throwing us back 1,000 clicks, debris and alien wreckage spinning past our viewports. Every hostile ship within 5,000 clicks was blown apart by the blast, the sudden silence on the comms so loud it made my ears ring. For 3 full seconds, no one spoke. Then the fleet comm filled with ragged cheers, but I cut them off before they could build, because I could see the jump gate glowing brighter than ever, more energy signatures piling up behind it, thicker and faster than before. I keyed the fleet comm, my voice steady even as my hands shook. That was just the first wave. Recharge all weapons, rally every remaining ship. We hold this line or we don't go home. No retreat. The jump gate flared like a wound in space, its edges rippling with unstable energy as the next wave poured through. My sensors screamed with the signatures of dozens, no, hundreds of alien warships, their hulls jagged and alive with bioluminescent veins. The tactical display lit up red, a sea of hostile markers converging on our battered line. I gritted my teeth, forcing my voice steady as I barked orders to the fleet. Form up. Dreadnoughts forward, frigates on the flanks, corvettes weave the net. Point defense hot, plasma batteries charged. We hold. The first of the enemy ships broke through, massive carriers vomiting swarms of xenofighters that streaked toward us like a storm of razors. Our corvettes spun into intercept patterns, their autocannons blazing, shredding dozens of fighters before being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Explosions dotted the void, each one a flare of dying metal and fire. I swung the frigate hard to port, lining up our broadside plasma batteries, and unleashed a volley into the nearest alien cruiser. The bolts tore through its hull, splitting it open, spilling glowing ichor into the void before it detonated in a chain reaction that took 3 fighters with it. But for every ship we destroyed, 10 more surged forward. The dreadnought Valor's Wrath fired its spinal railgun, a beam of kinetic fury that punched straight through an enemy battleship, splitting it in half. The wreckage spun, colliding with another alien vessel, both erupting in a fireball that lit the battlefield. Yet the swarm pressed closer, their plasma beams carving through our shields, their organic hulls regenerating faster than our guns could tear them apart. The comms filled with frantic reports, shields collapsing, hull breaches, engines failing. I silenced the noise, focusing only on the rhythm of battle, the dance of survival. I ordered a hard burn toward the enemy carriers, our frigate shuddering as the port engine strained against the damage. Fighters swarmed us, hammering our shields until they flickered dangerously low. All batteries full spread, I roared, and the weapons officer unleashed a storm of plasma fire. The void lit up as dozens of fighters disintegrated, their wreckage scattering like ash. We broke through the swarm, closing on the carrier, its massive maw glowing as it prepared to unleash another wave. I locked the forward plasma cannon, overcharging it until the hull vibrated with the strain, then fired. The bolt slammed into the carrier's core, and the beast erupted in a blinding explosion, its swarm cut off mid-launch. The fleet cheered, but it was short-lived. The jump gate pulsed again, brighter, wider, and from its depths emerged something far larger than the Leviathan we had slain. A warship the size of a moon, its hull bristling with spines, its core glowing like a star. My breath caught as its shadow fell across the battlefield, dwarfing everything around it. The comms went silent, every captain staring at the impossible scale of the monster. I forced the words out, my voice low but unyielding. Target the behemoth. All ships converge fire. If we fall here, humanity falls with us. This is our last stand. The behemoth loomed ahead, its spined hull blotting out the stars, every movement of its colossal frame sending ripples through the void. I felt the deck tremble beneath my boots as our frigate's reactors strained to channel maximum power into the forward batteries. Plasma coils screamed, their glow bathing the bridge in a sickly blue light. "Lock firing solution," I ordered, my voice steady despite the dread clawing at my chest. The targeting reticles danced across the monstrous silhouette, struggling to find a weak point in its regenerating armor. Valor's wrath surged forward, its railgun charging again, the barrel glowing white-hot. The shot thundered across the battlefield, a streak of kinetic fire slamming into the behemoth's flank. The impact barely scarred its surface, the alien hull knitting itself back together in seconds. It shrugged it off, my weapons officer muttered, disbelief in his tone. I silenced him with a glare. Then we hit it harder. Alien plasma beams lanced out, carving through our formation. A destroyer to starboard erupted in a blossom of fire, its hull splitting apart as crew were hurled into the void. The comms filled with screams, cut short as the ship disintegrated. I forced myself to ignore it, focusing on the tactical overlay. Frigates flank and harass, corvettes swarm its weapon nodes, dreadnoughts concentrate fire on its core. We bleed it until it dies. The swarm of alien fighters poured from its spines, a tide of living metal and fire. Our interceptors met them head-on, autocannons blazing, missile trails streaking across the black. Explosions dotted the void like a storm of dying stars. I swung the frigate into a hard roll, plasma batteries unleashing a broadside that tore through a cluster of fighters, their wreckage scattering like burning shrapnel. The hull shuddered as return fire slammed into our shields, the barrier flickering dangerously low. "Reinforce port shields," I barked, and the engineers diverted power, the lights dimming as the frigate groaned under the strain. The behemoth's maw opened, a glow building within its core. My blood ran cold. It's charging a superweapon, I realized aloud. The tactical display screamed warnings, the energy spike off the charts. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Break formation. The fleet scattered, engines flaring as the alien warship unleashed a beam of annihilation. The void itself seemed to tear apart as the blast ripped through space, vaporizing 3 cruisers instantly, their screams cut short in static. The shockwave slammed into us, shields collapsing, hull plating buckling. I gritted my teeth, forcing the frigate through the chaos, alarms blaring across the bridge. "We can't take another hit like that," my XO warned, sweat streaking down his face. I stared at the monstrous silhouette, its core still glowing, preparing another strike. My hands clenched into fists. "Then we don't give it the chance. All ships, concentrate fire on its weapon core. Overload reactors, push every gun to maximum output. This is it. Either we break it or it breaks us." The fleet roared back to life, plasma storms, railgun slugs, and missile salvos converging on the glowing maw. The void lit up in a fury of fire and steel, humanity's last stand blazing against the endless dark. The dreadnoughts thundered forward, their colossal frames blotting out the stars as they unleashed torrents of plasma fire. My frigate rattled under the recoil of our own batteries, the deck vibrating like the heartbeat of a dying beast. The alien Leviathan twisted, its armor plates shifting like living scales, deflecting half our barrage. The rest tore into its glowing core, sparks and molten fragments spraying into the void. For a moment I thought we had it. Then its counterstrike came. A swarm of needle-like projectiles streaked toward us, each one burning with unnatural energy. I pulled the frigate into a desperate dive, thrusters screaming, but 3 slammed into our aft shields. The barrier collapsed in a cascade of light, hull plating rupturing as alarms shrieked across the bridge. "Damage control, seal the breaches," I roared, gripping the command console so tightly my knuckles whitened. The crew scrambled, voices overlapping in chaos, but the ship held together, barely. Across the battlespace, our dreadnoughts pressed the attack. Railgun slugs the size of buildings hammered into the alien warship, each impact shaking its monstrous frame. Missile salvos streaked past us, contrails glowing against the black, detonating in blossoms of fire that lit the void like 1,000 suns. The alien fighters surged again, a tide of shrieking metal, but our corvettes carved through them with precision strikes, their autocannons shredding the swarm into fragments. I locked eyes on the tactical overlay, watching as the alien core pulsed brighter, its weapon systems recharging. "We're running out of time," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. My XO leaned in, his voice hoarse. "If that thing fires again, the fleet won't survive." I slammed a fist against the console. "Then we ram it. Dreadnoughts prepare for collision course. Frigates cover their advance. Corvettes tear apart its defenses. We end this now." The comms erupted with acknowledgments, captains committing their ships to the suicidal charge. The dreadnoughts surged forward, engines blazing, their massive hulls glowing under the strain. Alien plasma beams lashed out, carving through their armor, but they pressed on, unstoppable. My frigate swung into formation, plasma batteries roaring, interceptors diving past us in streaks of fire. The void became a storm of annihilation, every ship pouring its soul into the final strike. The alien Leviathan screamed, its core flaring like a newborn star. Our dreadnought slammed into it, detonating in cataclysmic bursts that shook the heavens. The shockwave hurled us backward, systems failing, lights flickering. I clung to the console, vision blurring, as the monstrous silhouette fractured, its spines collapsing inward, its glow fading into darkness. Silence fell across the comms, broken only by static and the ragged breaths of survivors. I stared at the wreckage drifting in the void, the shattered remains of humanity's last stand. We had won, but at a cost so great it felt like defeat. My frigate limped through the debris field, engines sputtering, shields gone, weapons silent. The fleet was ashes, the stars littered with burning wrecks, and yet against the relentless onslaught we had endured, for now. The flickering emergency lights cast a jaundiced glow over the battered console, as I forced my eyes to focus on the readouts flashing red across the hull integrity gauges. Shields were down to 0. The forward plasma bank sputtered uselessly, and the main thrusters groaned with every feeble pulse of power they could muster. Around us, the void was a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting corpses, our dreadnoughts reduced to molten husks, alien leviathans shattered into jagged shards that caught the distant starlight like broken glass. A low, throbbing hum rose from the engine core as the auxiliary power kicked in, a thin vein of life struggling to keep the frigate alive. I gripped the armrests of my chair, feeling the vibrations travel up through my boots, and called out to the few crew members still conscious at their stations. "Damage report," I said, voice hoarse but steady. "Status on life support, auxiliary thrusters, and any weapon systems we can bring online." Mara, our chief engineer, her face smeared with soot and blood, replied without looking up. "Life support holding at 60%. Auxiliary thrusters at 30%, enough for a slow burn but will overheat if we push past point 2. Laser batteries are fried, but the point defense railgun on the starboard side still has a charge. We can fire maybe 3 rounds before the capacitors drain." I nodded, letting the information settle like weight in my chest. The enemy's main force had been broken, but the silence that followed felt too complete, too final. Out there, beyond the debris field, the alien swarm might still be lurking. Scouts, remnants, perhaps a second wave drawn by the energy signature of our desperate clash. "Set a course for the nearest asteroid belt," I ordered, eyes scanning the tactical overlay that flickered back to life in fragments. "We'll use the rocks for cover, make any repairs we can, and see if we can salvage enough power to jump to the rendezvous point at Gamma 9. If there are any survivors out there, we'll find them." The frigate lurched forward as I engaged the auxiliary thrusters, a hesitant push that sent us drifting slowly toward a field of tumbling boulders glittering with ice. Pieces of shattered hull spun past us like deadly confetti, some catching on our scarred armor and scraping away paint and plating. I braced for each impact, feeling the ship shudder as micrometeoroids pelted the weakened hull. Through the cracked viewports, I watched the alien wreckage drift, tendrils of bioluminescent flesh still pulsing faintly within the shattered carapace of the Leviathan, a grotesque reminder that the enemy was not merely machine, but something far more ancient and alien. A sudden flash caught my eye. A small, sleek shape detaching from the larger wreck, its contours unfamiliar yet undeniably of alien make. It moved with a predatory glide, sensors likely scanning for heat signatures. "Contact," I barked, slamming my palm onto the comm panel. "All hands brace for possible hostilities. Point defense, track that bogey and prepare to fire." The railgun whined to life, a low buildup of electromagnetic energy that made the deck plates vibrate underfoot. I could see the targeting reticle flare green on the damaged HUD as the alien dart slipped between two rotating asteroids, its profile barely distinguishable against the star-streaked black. "Fire!" I shouted. The railgun discharged with a crack that seemed to split the silence itself. A solid slug of depleted uranium screamed forward, leaving a thin ionized trail. It struck the alien craft amidships, exploding in a spray of dark fluid and metallic shrapnel that glittered briefly before being swallowed by the void. The enemy vessel shuddered, its trajectory destabilized, and began to tumble end over end before colliding with a nearby asteroid, sending a plume of dust and ice into the darkness. A tense quiet settled again, broken only by the ragged breathing of my crew and the soft whine of the frigate's struggling engines. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, feeling the strain in my shoulders ease just a fraction. "Status on the railgun?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mara's voice crackled through the intercom, strained but resolute. "One shot fired, capacitors at 15%. We've got maybe another half charge if we can divert power from non-essential systems." I glanced at the power allocation diagram, the red bars blinking ominously. "Divert everything non-critical to the capacitors. Shut down environmental heating in unused sections. Reroute life support to the bridge and engineering only. We need to stay alive long enough to make that jump." The crew moved with practiced urgency, their motions stiff from fatigue and injury but driven by the primal will to survive. Lights dimmed in the corridors as we siphoned power, the temperature dropping a few degrees in the sealed-off sections. I could see my own breath fog slightly in the chill air as I leaned back, eyes never leaving the tactical display. A soft ping echoed, an automated distress beacon, faint but unmistakable, pulsing from somewhere deeper within the asteroid field. It was a frequency we used for Allied vessels, a relic of the old Commonwealth codes that had somehow survived the onslaught. "Is that," I began, the hope rising despite the wreckage around us. "It's a survivor beacon," confirmed Lees, our communications officer, her fingers flying over the cracked console. "Signal's weak, but it's definitely human. Coordinates put it about 3 clicks ahead, behind that big metallic fragment we just passed." I felt a surge of resolve cut through the exhaustion. We had survived the annihilation of the Armada, we had turned the tide against a god like Leviathan, and now there was a chance to pull others from the dark. "Set a course for that beacon," I commanded, voice firmer now. "We'll pull whoever we can aboard, patch them up, and then we'll make for Gamma 9. If there's any fight left in us, we'll see it through to the end." The frigate's thrusters kicked in again, a tentative but steady burn as we angled toward the glint of metal half buried in asteroid ice. Around us, the battlefield remained a silent testament to the cost of war: wrecked hulls, drifting corpses, the cold glow of distant stars bearing witness to our perseverance. As we closed in on the beacon, the alien debris gave way to a clearer patch of void, and there, clinging to a fractured piece of a destroyer's hull, I saw a faint light, an emergency strobe blinking in a pattern we all recognized. Someone was still out there, fighting to stay alive against the odds. I gripped the console tighter, feeling the vibration of the ship's strained engines through my palms, and whispered to the void itself, a promise to those still listening: "We're coming. Hold on.